Welcome to Wildflower Weekly with Ashley Adair. I'm Ashley, and I work as an Ag and Natural Resources educator in Montgomery County, Indiana. This is week 8 of our Wildflower Weekly series, Walking in McCormick Woods. The canopy is still filling in and is almost completely leafed out here in the woods. You'll see a lot of sugar maples around me that are starting to shade out the forest floor. As I said last week, we're nearing the end of spring ephemeral season in Indiana, but we still have a handful of species to look at and stay updated on. We don't have as many updates for you this week, so we've included some species that were found in other natural areas in Indiana so you can boost your repertoire of native species and use that for coming seasons walking in the woods. If you're ready, let's get started. Let's walk.
The dominant color in the woods this week is green, which will not change until leaves change color in the fall. As spring ephemerals senesce or die back for the season, we will turn our focus to other woodland perennial and annual species. For those of you joining us for the first time, this video series has mostly been discussing spring ephemeral wildflowers. A spring ephemeral is a woodland plant that completes its above-ground life cycle in a short period of time, usually between March and June in Indiana. These plants provide many benefits to woodland animals at this time of year, serving as food and nectar sources for insects and larger animals alike. We are nearing the end of spring ephemeral season in Indiana, as evidenced by warmer temperatures, at least most of the time, and shadier conditions in the woods. Let's set the scene. I'm walking at McCormick Woods, a Purdue-managed property near Purdue's campus. It was walked on Wednesday the 13th this week, and the weather was cloudy and 64 degrees Fahrenheit. This area is open to the public for hiking and mountain biking and is partially managed by a local mountain biking organization. This photo shows the south entrance to the park, adjacent to a golf cart path on the Ackerman Allen Golf Course. It's been really interesting watching the changes in McCormick Woods, beginning with our first week of Wildflower Weekly on the week of March 22nd. Watch with me as the woods begins its transformation from mostly brown to mostly green, starting with the greening of the forest floor and ending with the green up of the canopy. It's really been quite a drastic change over these last 2 months. Weather became much more seasonable beginning on Tuesday and Wednesday this week. Weather has gotten warmer, wetter, and more humid, signaling a shift into a more summery pattern through the rest of May. Just as a reminder, I'm hiking in northwest Tippecanoe County. If you're just as few as 15 miles north or south of me, you could be experiencing different conditions and different stages of plant growth and bloom at this time of year. It's also worth noting that not every spring ephemeral species is found in this woodland. Some species that are common or semi-common in other woods, like Bishop's Cap, Virginia bluebells, and Hepatica, are so far not found in McCormick Woods. If you have a species that you're wondering about, please feel free to reach out to me for identification. Contact information can be found in the description of this video. Here's how it works. Each slide has information organized in a particular way. Here is the photo, here is the scientific name, and here is the common name. Below the common name, you'll find some interesting facts about the plant, how it's pollinated, its role in the ecosystem, and more. We've added an update graphic in the bottom right of some slides to show you what's happening with a flower that we saw last week or in weeks past. This week we have fewer updates since things have started to slow down as the canopy has closed. But we're going to start off with an update on doll's eyes, or white baneberry. This spooky plant has been blooming, but the blooms of this plant are not particularly attractive to very many insects. The flowers don't produce nectar, they only produce pollen, so it's only attractive to a specific type of bee called the halictid bees. The rest of this plant is toxic, which gives it its other common name, white baneberry. Trioseum aurantiacum illinoisans, the Illinois horse gentian. This plant is relatively tall and has leaves that blush red on top. It's a member of the honeysuckle family, so it might resemble some of those other native honeysuckles that we can find elsewhere in Indiana. The flowers are attractive to bumblebees, and the foliage is a larval food source for the snowberry clearwing moth, along with other members of the honeysuckle family. The flowers shown here are actually just a set of 5 sepals at this moment. We'll watch for this one to bloom. The flowers will emerge from these sepals and are long, red, and tubular. The snowberry clearwing moth, a type of hummingbird moth that feeds on this foliage in its larval stage, is shown here. Our next new species this week is Osmorrhiza claytonii, otherwise known as sweet Cicely. This plant is very easily confused with anise root, a closely related plant also found in the carrot family. While this plant has been emerging for a few weeks, it's now blooming and a bit easier to recognize. It's attractive to a wide range of bees, flies, wasps, and beetles. It's also a larval food source for black swallowtail butterflies. A few comments on its relation to anise root. Anise root typically has more flowers per umbellate or cluster than sweet Cicely. Anise root also has smooth stems versus sweet Cicely's hairy stems. Notice that this plant does have a lot of individual flowers. I'm clustering the umbellates together in the image on the right so that you can see them a bit better. Another new species this week is Gallium consinum, shining bedstraw. This plant and its relatives are sometimes called sticky willy or catchweed because of the short bristly hairs that run along the stem. This plant will catch on your clothes and even on your skin, feeling a bit sticky to the touch. The tiny white flowers are attractive to a wide variety of bees and flies. The foliage is a larval feeding site for several species of moths. This plant is a member of the madder family. Other bedstraws in the Gallium genus can be found in sunnier locales, such as prairies and occasionally in weedy spots in your lawn. The hairs, seen here up close, are small but strong. They don't sting, but they feel sticky and can be a little bit annoying to peel off of your skin or your clothes. An update on great waterleaf, Hydrophyllum appendiculatum. We first saw this plant in week 3, as you can see in the inset image, with its water-stained leaves. The upper leaves, on the other hand, look a little more like maple leaves and have no water stains. The flowers of this species are attractive to a number of types of bees. One bee in particular is a specialist pollinator of waterleaf plants, Andrena geranii. There are several species of waterleaf in this genus that can be found in the Midwest, each with minor variations between them. Here's a review. Starting on week 3, we began seeing waterleaf lower leaves. By weeks 7 and 8, we are seeing upper leaves and blooming flowers. Another new plant this week is Euonymus obavatus, running strawberry bush. This is a very low-growing shrub and is sometimes confused with native vines and non-native invasive species. The flowers are very small and unassuming and mostly green, and they're usually found blooming on peduncles that are parallel with the leaves. This plant could potentially be confused with plants such as winter creeper, which are invasive. This member of the bittersweet family is also a cousin of winter creeper, which is in the same genus, but it does not have the invasive characteristics that winter creeper has. The flower pictured here is from an individual plant found in Park County. The fruits of these plants, when immature, are green and spiky and soon will turn alarmingly red. Keep an eye out for these in the fall. Our next new species is Onoclea sensibilis, the sensitive fern. This is the most common fern of this type in this habitat, which are wet forests, that's found in Indiana. It produces 2 types of leaves, fertile leaves and sterile leaves, which are both shown here, with the fertile leaf shown in brown on the right. This plant is toxic to horses, however, so if you're a trail rider and happen to see this one, prevent your animals from browsing on this species. On the left is a closer look at a sterile leaf. On the right is a closer look at a mature fertile leaf, which produces spores, or has produced spores. This plant is called sensitive not because it will move when you touch it, similar to a sensitive plant, but because it is sensitive to cold temperatures, it will die back if it's caught in an early frost. But thankfully, this plant wasn't caught by the frost that we had just within the last week. We've got a bug alert this week. Thomisidae. This is a family of flower crab spiders. You can see the flower crab on the underneath of the petals of this wild geranium plant. These spiders produce silk but do not build webs. Instead, they wait to ambush insects that visit the flowers. They are called crab spiders because of their posture. They hold their 4 front legs in a wide stance resembling a crab. They also move from side to side in a way that resembles crabs. Keep an eye out for these fanciful little spiders when looking at flowers of all types. Some flower crab spiders have camouflage that make them the same colors as the flowers that they prefer to hunt on. So you might see them coming in pure white, bright yellow, and sometimes even green. We've featured some other Indiana species this week that are not suited for the habitat found in McCormick Woods. I wanted to draw your attention to a few of these in case you've been seeing any of these out during your walks. Our first one is Virginia bluebells, Mertensia virginica. Virginia bluebells are common and showy inhabitants of damp woodland environments. These are the last blooms of the year. Another plant is forest phacelia, which can sometimes be confused with other waterleaf species, which makes sense because they're all part of the waterleaf family. Another plant is Silene virginica, or the fire pink. Fire pink is a striking woodland flower, one of the brightest neon-colored flowers you could find in an Indiana forest. It bears resemblance to the very rare royal catchfly plant, which is a cousin of fire pink, but found in prairies rather than in forests. Next up is Collinsia verna, or blue-eyed Mary. Blue-eyed Mary is an annual flower not commonly found in the state, but where it is found, it's numerous. It can form huge colonies. Portland Arch, where these are found, is a perfect habitat for this plant, which prefers floodplains and terraces along streams. The next plant is Mitella diphylla, otherwise known as bishop's cap. This plant is sometimes known as mitrewort and is almost exclusively found along slopes in rich woodlands. The tiny fringed flowers somewhat resemble the mitre worn by Christian bishops. Some sloped properties to check out nearby where you might find this plant include Fall Creek Gorge and Shade State Park. Finally, the plant on the right is rock polypody, which is a plucky little fern that can grow by clinging to rocks. It can be found on moist rocks, boulders, and cliffs in many parts of Indiana. Our last species this week is Pedicularis canadensis, or wood betony. Wood betony is an attractive and uncommon plant. First off, it requires acidic soils, which are not always common in Indiana. We're a limestone state after all. This plant is also a hemiparasite, which means that while it does use the sun for energy, it also siphons sugars and nutrients away from other plants nearby. Several of these plants can be seen on sloped parts of the trail at Fall Creek Gorge. We've got a brief update on invasive species this week. In regard to garlic mustard, I want to encourage you to take a closer look at this species by checking out my YouTube video, What is Garlic Mustard? You can find this video on our Purdue Extension Montgomery County YouTube page, along with all of the other Wildflower Weeklies from the past 7 weeks. As a reminder, please use the resources shown here to learn more about invasive species featured this week and in past episodes. As always, stay safe and continue to practice physical distancing when you're outdoors, but make sure to get outside when you can. We'll see you next time.